my talk here today is going to be very practical in the sense that very focused on how we make sure that AI works, and in particular why in medical devices, in medical space, it's quite challenging to do. So, so let's talk just a little bit of my background, so you know where I'm coming from. So I have about 5 years in medical research, and I started as a biostatistician in clinical trials, drug trials, in phase 2 and phase 3 studies. So my job was to make sure that research is robust enough and we can show that drugs are safe and they work, and show how much treatment effect there is. And I joined machine medicine about 2 years ago as a data scientist, and we are developing computer vision models. And of course, we are validating them and showing them that they are up to the highest standard that's required from medical devices. So. And just to set up a framework of what I'm going to talk about today. So there are very different perspectives on terms of development of medical devices and how regulatory bodies and clinicians might see them. So first I will talk about how I, as a developer, usually approach medical devices, what is important for regulatories and clinicians and what they're looking for, how we can marry these two approaches, how do we find the middle ground, and how MMT in practice solves these problems. And I'm going to start with a very cartoonish scheme, how actually why we are building medical devices. So let's start with a very simple thing. Like, they have a patient and they have a clinic, doctor. So, and generally patient goes to a clinic or for whatever reason, and they communicate with the doctor and they create medical records, and generally go into a database for future reference or whatever what they want to use them for. And there is no basically AI need, but let's say there is a tech company. So tech company, Blue Robot is here. In particular, us, MMT. So we usually have expertise in large-scale computing algorithms, and we see the potential of the database, and we want to use them to produce something useful. And this is how generally medical devices and AI come about in this context. But what we should think about is what we really want to connect our AI to a patient, and what our robot sees is a database, and what the regulatory bodies will generally see. They want to see this connection between the patient and AI. So just to why we're even building the AI algorithms. There are many reasons, but I will just talk about the most general ones. Of course, AI algorithms generally, they're fast and they're cheap compared to, for example, very highly skilled trained clinician. And we want AI algorithms helping them, reducing the time, reducing the workload, or even taking some task off them. There are advantages to algorithms like efficiency and even efficacy. So AI algorithms can process large amounts of data, and which might not be possible for a clinician to see all the possible scenarios. And well-developed AI is consistent, so there is no problems. Same clinicians can see the same patient twice, and maybe arrive to a different conclusion, or even if two clinicians see the same patient, they arrive to different conclusions. But generally, we want the AI to arrive to the same conclusion for the same patient always. And what are the challenges associated with this? Well, of course, first challenge is safety. And we want to show that the algorithm always, there is no problems, there is no caveats to the algorithm. It operates well under any possible scenario. We want to address bias potentially that arises in the algorithm naturally. Like common example might be skin color, and we actually do see sometimes in our video analysis that the skin color could be affecting model performance. So we need to take care of that, show that there is no bias in AI, and and then last but not least, we need to show that there is a benefit of the algorithm. So all medical devices are inherently risky, so there are risks to any system, and we need to show that the benefit that the AI brings is outweighing that. So, and I added here the blue robot here because there's a developer, he sees these exciting advantages of the algorithm, and usually we are focusing on this part of the AI, and when you talk about clinicians and regulatory authorities, they want to understand how it works, they want to show that it is safe, and in general, they like risk averse. And there is obviously a slight, it's not, they're working towards the same goal, but there is a slightly different motivations to both sides. So let's start with the developer point of view. So this is a classic example, the same picture. So we have some historical data set, and we go through iterative development, we try different things, and we arrived at AI, general AI, quote unquote. So, but there are many steps to this process. So we say, we do this development, we want to choose what is important for us. We usually call it performance metrics. We optimize the algorithms according to this performance metric. We believe the best for a system. We, of course, incorporate other different fields because AI is a very active research field, and sometimes you want to borrow algorithms from any other field you think will be beneficial for you. Well, okay, so we obviously include open source software. We have to do it because the volume of the open source software you just build on existing software, and you have to use open source software. And then we talk about what the problems are with potentially using something like library you can find on the internet. We use additional data set, and in general, quality of the data is very important for us. So we want to enhance our data set and see if it's very representative of the target population, stuff like that. And actually, the most exciting part as a developer of the algorithm, I tried to many exciting different models to arrive to the best conclusion, but again, according to my performance metric. And when the regulatory authorities see all of that, what they think? They think, oh, how can we break all of this? And what could go wrong with any of these steps? Let's talk about performance metrics. So they think, oh, is it the performance metric we chose right for the job? What is the clinical relevance to this metric? How safety was assessed when you think about, and there are many scenarios, then you can select very good performance metric, but it might not necessarily account for all possible scenarios. And for example, open source software and any software in general, what they think, what happens if it fails? And they generally ask, they're not asking if it's going to fail. They say it will fail at some point. What happens then? So you need to account to the risk of that. And and also most common one, I guess, how your performance of your algorithm you optimized on your historical data or any other data set you brought in will translate into a clinical practice after all. There is two competing priorities here. So let's talk about, so this is how regulators usually formalize these concerns they have and how we want to, like, how, what topics we need to address when we develop the medical device. So let's talk about intended use. So you have to be very clear to define, so what your device is meant to do. So is it a screening tool? Is it are we measuring abnormal movements? So that's what we generally do here in Parkinson's disease, for example. We're measuring how severe a patient is, how affected the patient is. Indications for use is who is going to use the device, what is a particular target population, because it might not seem a big deal that, oh, your algorithm doesn't care about the patient. Like, it doesn't care what particular type of patient there is, but there are always caveats to that, so you have to be very precise to identifying what is a particular population you're targeting and why. And there is a technical part of this. So when you build a software, you need to produce a set of documentation and, for example, software architecture, how your device is built, what your components are, and how it generally works. So you want to show that you laid out your device logically, and there is no potential places for it to fail. And lastly, evidence. That is category of where clinical trials usually fall from. You need to show that all your claims you made here, you need to show that your devices actually can support that. And well, how I see our solution to this problem. So we take care of the whole cycle of the development of the device, starting from the data capture, when we have our own devices, own applications that capture the videos. We have, of course, we do research where we develop our models in many different fields, but yeah, models, we take care of that. We have a software development that we make sure that what we developed here is robust and very high quality software code, that there is no bugs and it tested well. And after all of these 3 steps, we want to handle clinical validation, which is a clinical trial. And yeah, in a bit of a detail. So about the first step, data collection, why it is important in the medical domain in general. Medical data sets are not large by any, by AI standards. So we might have hundreds or maybe thousands of assessments. But if you think about something like ChatGPT, it's hundreds of thousands or millions of data points. So they are 2 or 3 orders magnitude bigger. So that's why we need highly standardized data sets to reduce the potential variability and make it easier for us, and also make it algorithms robust to any potential changes in the data. Rigorous research, it's about our models. It's most exciting part for me, but how we do it, and we try to start with very simple baselines. So we try to build explainable models, so we know exactly what is going on in the model, how it works, and we gradually improve. So we do incremental improvements to the models. And how we do it, we do hypothesis-driven research. And what I mean by this, then, for example, we have a new model. We need to show that beyond the reasonable doubt that it is better than the previous one. And we obviously set up statistical tests that can show that we actually improve in the models and that they are robust to the improvement. High quality software, that a bit takes a lot of work, but in general, what you're trying to achieve, as I said before, we need to set a certain set of procedures. Once we arrive at your model, you need to develop your code in such a way that it 100% works. So you need to analyze if this component fails, that there is no harm to the patient, or if there is no bug, it always works 100% of the time according to the exact specification you defined. And there are a set of standards we operate under. I'm not going to go through them, but there are, if you want to know, that these are quite extensive standards. In particular, 62304 is very important for medical devices, and we operate under all of these standards. And validation. Last step, but often the hardest step, to show that your medical device actually works. It is a classical approach. I think many of us here are familiar with it as a clinical study or clinical trial, ideally prospective clinical trial. And we develop studies and protocols that can support claims that we do for medical device validation. And the second step here that obviously that in the machine learning research, not always followed, but we also predefine our acceptance criteria before we see the results. And so we can make sure that no bias, as I mentioned before, crept into our validation. Well, that's all I have for today. Cool.
Again, there's some time for questions.
Yes, so I just had a quick question about safety and statistics. So in 2017, I believe, Babylon published a landmark paper about Bayesian neural networks, saying the reasoning, Bayesian reasoning when you're looking at counterindications is far more similar to how clinicians think than looking at the frequency at which symptoms appear. Do you find that this is what we are observing in this model, and is it easy to build a safety case around Bayesian statistics than preventive statistics?
Me as a statistician, I don't see a difference between Bayesian statistics and frequency statistics in general. There are advantages to both approaches, but I mean, if your sample size increases, if you want very technical, there is no difference between Bayesian and frequentist approach. The advantages of Bayesian approach is that you can take some prior knowledge. If you have a small sample, which is relevant to clinical trials potentially, if you have a small sample, you want to include this prior knowledge, so you don't want many patients into your study, because study is a risk always. So that's the advantage of Bayesian statistics, I think, in the settings like that.
Yeah, two questions, and thanks for the presentation, very well. So number one is just a clarification for me. When you mention medical device, is it actually a medical device or a software as a medical device? Because there's a difference there. Unless you're taking into account the device that is capturing the whatever data.
Yeah, so what we talk here, because I talk about software development, our devices are purely software. We don't have like hardware. Even if you have an app, it will be still software, because like your phone is not part of the medical device. So what we do is software as a medical device.
Thank you for that. And the second question is, so I don't know if the algorithms that you have built in the validation part, I'm curious to know which type of clinical endpoints are you measuring against to just to kind of prove that your new metric or new biomarker is as accurate in detecting whatever you're trying to detect as the gold standard metric.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So it's not not an easy one. So everything depends on your intended use and indications for use. So that's going back to a performance metric we care about. So let's take a hypothetical scenario, and we want to have a diagnostic device. And then you would have a gold reference standard. Let's say cancer, and like biopsy would be your gold reference standard, and you would want to, first of all, there's guidance from FDA that clearly states what the best metric to use, but in particular in this case, you would want high sensitivity and specificity of your diagnostic device. And it all depend on intended use and indications for use. It's all very device specific, but
can I add something? So I don't know if you can answer for Parkinson, for example. I think for Parkinson, the gold standard is a subjective like score from a physician that gives basically the amplitude of the tremor, and that's basically like the gold standard metric. Are you guys like doing that like comparison against like those type of subjective gold standard, and just to know a little bit about the experience on that like comparison?
so if it is, there is so-called reference standards. So I think it won't be a gold standard because it is subjective, but it's a reference standard. And what it means by reference standard, it's the best tool out there. But there might be other tools that will be just standards. And then what we would use as a reference standard, for example, for Parkinson's disease, is an MDS-UPDRS would be a reference standard for movement impairment. And for example, going back to your question about the metrics, so there is metric, for example, Cohen's kappa. I don't know if you've heard of it, but this is a measure how well you capture this MDS-UPDRS from 0 to 4. It will measure how well you agree with the reference standard. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you thought about post-launch, post-market sort of procedures and processes for your machine learning models.
Yeah.
So obviously you can get the perfect model, but it may still need to change.
Yeah, so this is a big topic on how you can update your machine learning models post market approval, and there's still debate on it. But there are ways to make continuous learning algorithms. You just, when you do your, so let's talk about this bit here. When you have to define the procedure, how you're going to update, and what thresholds you're going to pass. So say we're rolling out a newly trained model, there is a predefined process of steps. So it must be no faults, performance must be greater than the previous one, for example, and then once you pass all criteria, then we can roll out an update. So there is a way to update machine learning models, but it's one of the challenging topics. Yeah.
Thank you for the very interesting talk. A lot of things resonate with my way of thinking. I was wondering, a personal opinion, how hard do you find to convey this message in companies that you've worked so far? Like control the data, do rigorous research. There's a lot of what I found is very interesting, just like to see the numbers at the end of the line.
In our company, not that difficult, because we do realize, because we based on machine learning, not first, but there is a high degree of machine learning we value. We understand what's the cross-validation. You have to hold out your data very carefully, not to produce something embarrassing to you. So, in general, in machine learning community, I think I've seen a paper But it was quite a while ago, but 2019, and then it was very not favorable in terms of medical AI. They said that only 1 or 2 out of several 50 papers even considered validation and proper validation and stuff like that. So this, in the general community, is not very well accepted yet. I think it will be improved.
Thinking of the same paper I had in mind when I came up with this question, and like they have a review of medical application and of machine learning, and they either have every one of them had one reason for not being properly validated. Thank you.
We've got time for a few more questions.
Yuri, when you're talking about the effectiveness, how effective is the technology? Is that clinical effectiveness, or are we talking about cost effectiveness for the regulators?
Well,
Sense order of magnitude.
yeah. So when we talk about effectiveness, that we generally want something clinically effective. Like, what is? So let's say we have an algorithm that 51% accurate. Let's say like 50 is absolutely random, and you have a 51% accurate algorithm. So you can show that it is better than chance. Is it clinically meaningful? No. So it's not very practical, not useful to any clinician. So when you think about effective, you need to show that for a clinician, it will be very useful.
I meant actual effectiveness compared to the best standard of care that you've got in the moment. So clinicians making an assessment in clinic versus this model.
There is a so-called benefit-risk analysis. So there might other considerations go into this analysis. So let's say your algorithm is not as accurate, but is so much faster, order of magnitude faster. So then you can construct an argument that this is still a very useful tool. You need to construct this argument and need to convince FDA in particular that what device is doing is very valuable to the patient.
Have you noted any changes in the way that the FDA is providing regulatory oversight over the last couple of years, given the number of developments in the field?
Yeah, so there are several guidances that are coming out covering machine learning, and one of the guidances actually covered these continuous updates of the models. So there are increasingly they are more and more open to the idea in general.
And do you target 510K or de novo, or does it depend on?
Well, there is there are different complexities. So there are, depending on your device and what your intended use, and then you might want to be 510K, which is much easier, or de novo. So we are deciding for each particular device in each particular case.
Yeah, I'd just be curious to know what you think about, like, obviously you're capturing data on kind of consumer devices that the general public have access to. What advantage, if any, would having access to better hardware give? Or is that something that you've considered? I'm just curious.
Well, if we talk about our products, one of the strongest points of our product is that it runs on the consumer-grade devices, because that anyone in this room can take his device and capture the video. So this is one of the, I guess, requirements for a product, and obviously better hardware makes our job easier, but again, we want to build something that is useful to patients, not that easier for us to build.
Yeah. But I'm just like, has the hardware improved in its ability to capture data much over the last, say, 5 years? Like, is that something you've noticed?
Well, yeah. So one of the examples is now iPhones have LiDAR cameras in front of them, all of them, which wasn't available 5 years ago, which is a huge step up in terms of data volume. That's one example. So all the cameras are getting better, higher frame rates, better shutter speed. Yeah, there is an exponential growth in quality of the devices. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yuri,
Right.
and thank you very much, Mark. And thank you all for coming and spending a nice evening with us. So finally, we do have a selection of pizza and drinks. The pizza will be here very soon, so that's hot and fresh. Yep, thank you very much.